Good afternoon, everybody. It feels like the whole hall can hear me. I'm sure they can't, but welcome to the second day of the Furniture Show. It's a real pleasure to be here. First things first, I want to thank the organisers for inviting me and three members of Made in Britain to speak to you this afternoon. I hope you've all enjoyed the show so far and managed to get round and see the many exhibitors that we have here and in the other halls. We're going to enter into 45 minutes of dialogue about British manufacturing. We've got some experts with us, and you'll get to know them in a second. But first things first, I want to invite people to come and get a little bit closer so that they can join in with this dialogue, learn something about the future growth of British manufacturing in the furniture sector, and maybe if you can think of some questions as well that come along, that come to mind as we're going through the discussion, you can ask our panelists later on. My name is John Pearce. I'm the Chief Executive of Made in Britain. We are a non-profit organisation that galvanises the success and growth of British manufacturing with a unique Made in Britain mark, which all of our members use on their products. They use it to identify themselves and their products, but also to clarify the values of British manufacturing as it grows, and we all know that it needs to grow. We need to make more things closer to where they're used, closer to where they're needed, and Made in Britain is very proud to bring together 2,000 businesses that are doing that across 50 different product sectors. So furniture is a very important sector for us, but we're also representing companies that are manufacturing in engineering, in vans, cars, bikes, shoes, all kinds of things that we need. They're essential to human well-being. They're made in Britain, in this country. And if you look out for the Made in Britain mark, you'll be able to identify something that's made closer to where it's needed. So we're going to spend the next few minutes understanding a little bit more about what growth of British manufacturing looks like through the lens of our three members of Made in Britain here. And I think the first thing we ought to do is introduce them one at a time. I'll start at the end. Harry, just tell us a little bit about yourself and about the product that you make in this country.
Hi John, thanks ever so much, and good afternoon everybody. My name's Harry. I'm one of the founding family members of Wrought Iron and Brass Bed Company. We're located in North Norfolk. All our beds are made from British iron, and we're royal warrant holder to the late Queen Elizabeth II. The company was founded about 20 years ago by my mother, purely because she couldn't find a bed that would suit me. As a child, I was a handful, shall we say, and mother was looking for a metal bed that would stand the test of time. And there wasn't one on the market. So mum actually went to a local blacksmith, and then the company was born from there. Like I say, we're in North Norfolk. All our products come with a lifetime guarantee. We're also the only carbon neutral plus iron bed maker globally, and we're also the only metal bed maker that I know that is part of Made in Britain. And we've been a member for about 5 years, and we couldn't have asked for such a supportive trade body. So thank you.
That's very kind of you to say so. Thank you. Lee, tell us a little bit about yourself and about your product range.
Thanks, John. So I'm Lee Lovett. I'm a director for Soho Lighting Company, and we've been with Made in Britain quite newly because unlike Harry, we're quite a new company. So we've been operating for around 4 years now and have recently joined the Made in Britain family. And essentially, our ethos, we started the company by renovating properties around London and Soho, hence the name. However, we also recognise there's such a wealth of talent and artisan craftsmen and women in the UK, and so all of our workshops and our factory and our distribution house is based down in Cornwall, and we work with artisans around the country. So we work with 4 artisan organisations here in Birmingham that come from the 1800s, and our whole ethos is about bringing the best of British talent to lighting to our customers. So in a nutshell, that's Soho Lighting.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, Stephen, tell us about yourself and the company that you work for.
Yep, my name's Stephen Parkinson. I am the product designer, or one of the product designers at Gresham Office Furniture. We're based in Bolton in the northwest. I think you said before, 4 years we've been members of Made in Britain. We work across all sectors of furniture basically, so storage, sofas, any soft seating, desking, tables, basically everything that you find within any of these halls we can we can turn our hand to. We've been a company since 1976, so we've been doing it for a while. I've been there for 17 years, so yeah, we like to think we know what we're doing, yeah.
Fabulous, thank you very much. So you know a little bit more about the people that are going to discuss the topics and a little bit about Made in Britain as a family. I like that you call it a family. It is a family of very proud British manufacturing business. What we're going to discuss, first of all, the first sort of question we would like to explore a little bit is around innovation. We know that this is going to be a tough year, and we know that it's going to be competitive because we know that people will be very careful about how they spend their money. I don't mind who goes first, but let's start with you, Lee. I'll put you first. How is innovation used at your business as a fundamental USP, and how do you make that value? How do you translate that into sales?
Sure. So Soho, being a lighting company, innovation really comes in two parts for us. So one is performance and the other is form. Performance being technical, electrical excellence and drive and innovation, and then form being what you would more typically expect from a lighting organisation, which is around aesthetics, build, sourcing materials, and the evolution of those materials and quality. And the technical innovation comes from, I mentioned we started the company renovating properties in Soho, and we had this incredibly bright 23-year-old electrician. Phenomenal. He's now 30 or in his 30s. He's our technical director, and he really drives that. And one of the things that we recognized was that with switches and sockets, which is where we started, there's an extremely high price point. Most of them were sourced from abroad and finished abroad. And also, all dimming knobs were designed for the old Edison bulbs. So you always had problems with compatibility with dimmers. They used to buzz, they didn't work, and it's because they weren't designed correctly. So we all sat together, and also I don't like, from an aesthetic perspective, screws in place. So we sat together and said, gosh, we've got to be able to do this better. This was about 9 years ago, and so we were a long time in development and research. And so from a technical perspective, we now, after 3 years of R&D, are just bringing out the first dimming module that's designed for LED environmentally friendly bulbs. But from an aesthetic perspective, Josh, if I nag him long enough, he usually designs me something that helps and works. But if you're doing a period property and you've got those beautiful toggle switches, I don't like seeing the dimmer knobs on the plates. And so he's now designed this first retractive dimming toggle. So you don't need any dimming knobs at all. We're launching them next week, and they're all designed for LED bulbs. So that's an example of technical. And then from an aesthetic perspective, and also, much like all of our organizations, environmental considerations are right at the heart. And so, for example, we're constantly looking for new resources. So we've bought out for Selfridges last year as a part of their Let's Change collection. We bought out a range of pendants that are actually 3D printed from recycled fishing nets and plastic salvaged from the sea. And what's brilliant about that, and again, we work with a fabulous artisan, a gentleman called Ian who owns this company called Fishy Filaments. And essentially, because we're paying the fishermen for their nets, not only are they not discarding their nets, they're now salvaging other discarded nets from the oceans, and we're buying them and turning them into shades. So it's constantly looking for new innovative ways to do things, creating the market, and finally, a lot of our design evolution comes from our clients by saying, we love this, but could you do it like this? Or could you change that? And because we do work with so many artisans in Britain, we're agile and we can do that. And then we know that we're selling into a market that's receptive and wants the goods because our customers are designing them with us.
And innovation in the supply chain as well as in the product design, which those two things go together and then both form part of the message of why you would buy the product.
It does, and the artisans that we work with are also always pushing us to say, have you considered doing this? We could do that for you. And we're like, oh gosh, that's a really great idea. But it's easier when you're a younger, newer, agile company. But so I'll stop talking.
Harry, your product is a traditional product that everybody recognizes, and a lot of people would associate it with the past. How do you make innovation something that is in the sort of DNA of the business when you've got a product that to look at looks like something that's doesn't need any innovation?
That's a question.
That's your challenge every day at work. Yeah.
That's the challenge. Yeah, you are right. It's a lot of wrought iron and brass bed company beds are based on those all original like bed knobs and broomstick styles.
We've all seen them.
Yeah, you've all seen them. Probably not one of ours. You've all seen them.
Yeah.
And really, for wrought iron, innovation comes in a way of investing in craftsmanship. So all our product is made by hand. So all our brass is spun by hand. Castings cast by hand. Our beds are, raw material comes through one door and a beautiful brass or iron bed leads through another door. And our kind of approach to innovation is reinstalling those crafts and that level of craftsmanship that was lost over many, many years of the metal bed company being diminished. This year we're working really closely with local councils and with the local college to train kind of new craftsmen, iron workers, brass spinners, casting kind of technicians to come into the market so we can kind of boost our offering to the customer. By then investing in the craftsmanship, we can then push innovation for new design, new ways of work. So this year we're bringing a lot of things that are currently out of house, in-house. We can improve our technologies, and then by improving our technologies helps us be green. Like I said earlier, we are the only carbon neutral plus metal bed maker in the world, and we do that through pushing technology, pushing the way that our beds are made, investing in kind of green credentials. So our powder coating is surrounded by what we call a water curtain. What that does is trap any kind of particles of the powder that don't adhere to the metal frame and stop it from going out into the environment. And then that water's fully recyclable. And then every 3 months, that's kind of drained down and it's disposed of responsibly. And I believe that water then goes into some form of chemical treatment to kind of descale kind of chemicals, limescale out of pipework. So innovation for wrought iron is probably different than lighting or office furniture because we have to make sure that we're still rooted in traditional crafts. But how do we make sure that those crafts are still there in 5, 10, 15 years' time?
So innovation really not for the sake of it, not solving problems or not solutions looking for problems, but using innovation to make the business and the product more attractive to everyone, including the people who work there.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And like Lee was saying with your craftspeople, they push back and they ask, have you thought of doing this? Can you do this? And our craftsmen do the same. And they come to us and say, we've always done it like this, but shall we do it like this? And we say, well, do you know what? Let's give it a go because there might be a reason for this suggestion.
Yeah.
And, it's fundamental that we make sure that we stay innovative and we focus on how we can make our manufacturing better, our processing better, our product better, and also kind of bring as much as we can back in-house.
And innovation at Gresham, Stephen, I would imagine that is in absolutely every thread of what you do. You're innovating all the time, new products every time.
Yeah, and I think to lend a bit from what Harry said, I think it's dependent on the group of people that we work with. So obviously, I predominantly work in the design department in Scrip, but the fact that the company's so large, we can borrow expertise from welding, from our bespoke joinery section. So to feed an idea, to feed the quality and the innovation of what we do is not down to one particular person or one department. It's a bit of it's a group effort is what I suppose I'm trying to say. And you innovate, I think, via that group learning. So the weekly meetings that we have involve people from every different aspect of the business to make sure that the decisions that we're making, be it a design decision or a manufacturing decision, those are done via a group, not via running off in one singular direction. It's dependent on everyone's decision. Yeah.
I want to move on to the topic of quality because quality control is an issue for every manufacturing business. And of course, when the business or the manufacturing centre is distant from this country, that can make certain challenges in quality control. Harry, quality control at wrought iron bed, I mean, what what does it look like on a day-to-day basis?
It doesn't look like what it used to. Which was basically us just rigorously testing the bed to see if we could break it. As the company's progressed, of times have progressed, that we have to now kind of be more in line with rules and regulations. And so there is a department called FIRA where we can send the product to, they can test it, and they test it against if it's dropped, pinch points. Also, I mean, one thing that's lucky about our product is we don't have to worry about fire retardant because, it's not going to be an igniter, so we don't have to worry about that aspect. But we do have to make sure, there's no chance of entrapment, hanging, pinch points, and aspects like that. For beds-wise, it's very simple. For our mattresses, it's completely different. We have to make sure that they are, FR kind of compliant, that the fibers that go into them, because we use a lot of organic, natural fibers, they come from kind of approved and regulated sources, so we can make sure that it's a reliable and ethical supply chain. Mattresses is a completely different kind of topic in relation to beds, but then they are still at fire retardant compliant, etc.
Yeah. And quality control, Lee, your product, I would imagine, again, it's
pretty rigorous.
This is another daily topic for manufacturers, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, being a lighting company, we have to subscribe to all of the British standards, the European standards, the American standards of lighting. Actually, post-Brexit, they haven't changed that much. There's some discussion about there being some changes, but pretty much everything is based on BSI, and C is all, electrically, it's all based on British standards predominantly, which is great for us. One thing that we do that's over and above is that we're accredited. We elect to be accredited by the LIA, which is the Lighting Independent Association, and we are rigorously audited by them. But we think, when you're dealing with electrical products, be safe. It's something that we invest in. And then in terms of our actual production and products, it's an internal process, and you can always tell whether you've done a great job on testing by the returns that you don't get. So there we go.
And quality control at Gresham must be a very big topic. I would imagine there's a whole department looking after quality control because you have a very big factory and a lot of people working on that.
Yeah, it's a massive part of what we do. I think because we obviously started such a long time ago, 1976, it has grown with all other aspects of the business. The quality department sits right opposite the design department, so we can't escape trying to find our way around, if you like, which you shouldn't obviously do. The changing of the office furniture market into a more of a domestic aesthetic has brought up, I wouldn't say difficulties, but changes in the way that we design things to suit the ergonomic standards that we have to apply to, and the physical structural standards you have to apply to, and then to kind of parrot what the guys are saying, the fire regulations are the main point that we try to address, obviously on our own, with the involvement of fabric suppliers, foaming suppliers, and then with the export, which we've currently started doing to the US. The differing standards that apply throughout the different states within America make it, quite tricky, because we're in the UK, we've got a united standard on that. It doesn't work the same in America. They've got, particularly in California, they've got a different approach, which is more, obviously it's based on fire retardancy, but it's based on the chemicals that are used, and the carcinogenic properties sometimes of those chemicals means that in California particularly, it works a little bit different. Is the point where we're at. Obviously it's only in its infancy from Gresham's point of view, but it's what we've done first before we've started to export. You've got to obviously appreciate that it's a completely different market, and the rules are massively different. So it makes it interesting.
Yeah. And Gresham is an exporting business. I want to talk a little bit about growth this year, about growth of British manufactured products. I mean, I know you've got one eye on export market. What does that look like for Gresham in terms of overall growth plans for the British economy, which we know is going to go through some challenges this year, as it has done in previous 3 years? There have been some quite serious economic externalities, let's call them. How does growth exporting fit into the Gresham story this year and next?
Yeah, I've gone early on the US side of things, but that obviously is at the forefront of what we've started to do. It's meant expansion as in buying a factory or building a factory over in the US. That started 4 years ago, so 2019, and obviously the pandemic slowed the expansion down. We've just picked up that again, so we are currently exporting, but with the export of talent, if you like, as well, where we're developing the factory over there, developing the manufacture. We're still designing the stuff in the UK, but those designs are getting translated, if you like, to inches and manufactured across there. It meant that we have to expand internally as well. So our Bolton site has expanded. We've moved down into a new property in London, so to kind of to compensate for that across sea expansion, it's meant that the team hasn't necessarily grown UK wise, but we're in the process of employing US upholsterers, welders to duplicate what we do here on a smaller scale at the start. I think the facility is the same size in the US as the one we've got in Bolton.
And what is the evidence around how much the customers on the other side of the Atlantic, how do they view Made in Britain? What do they see when they see the Made in Britain mark on a business and identifying a product?
Yeah, from what I've seen, it's there's the attraction of it being British made. So obviously to us, you'd imagine it's standard, but I think there's a definite intrigue, if that's the right word, and a definite excitement about the fact that it's British. This is I think they have a particular idea of what it is that we create in the UK. Everything's not a Routemaster Buzz or a Mini Cooper, but I think they tend to impart that.
I love the idea of intrigue and excitement. When you're overseas selling products, do you find that people look at the Made in Britain mark and think intrigue and excitement? What else are they saying about your beds? Because you're an exporting business, I think you've got your eye on exports. Tell us about that for this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Gresham wrought iron this year. There's going to be a huge focus on kind of exporting overseas. And I think really it's not just isolated to ourselves. I think for British manufacturing this year is going to be such a positive year for growth overseas. And that is down to the coronation of the King, this year, because we've got so much going on in this country. Like I say, with the coronation of the King, Britain is going to be in the focus on a global stage. So to be able to associate yourself with a trade body where you can proudly, authentically fly the British flag as a company that makes your product in Britain, I think is going to work wonders. And when wrought iron, when we go overseas, and in June we're scheduled to go to a furniture fair in Dallas, we're always welcomed with open arms because we represent a minority. If you walk around the venue here, you'll see that there's a lot of furniture manufacturers, say, for example, from Italy, but there's not many from Britain. And so when we do go overseas to these trade shows, it's like I say, they do welcome you because when we don't have the representation that we used to. And personally, I think that is wrong, because Britain was founded on the Industrial Revolution, and we had so much to offer, and we've lost so much over time. And by bringing that back to Britain to be represented by a non-profit that kind of puts Britain in the foresight of people, I think is really beneficial. And I don't think that's just down to wrought iron. Like I say, I think that is down to any manufacturer in this country. If you make your product in this country, this year should be a great year for you because of everything that we're going to be going on in this country.
And we are going to be telling a new story of the whole country, aren't we? Because Britishness itself is going to be not reinvented, but let's say restylized around up to and including the coronation and well beyond that. Lee, what do you think that will look like? What do you think your business maybe could contribute to a sort of patriotic view of British manufacturing in the future and how that might shape the national narrative a little bit?
Sure. Well, I think it's such an exciting year for manufacturing. And we mentioned about the economy, and we're just seeing that as an opportunity. There's a lot of talk about us entering into the fourth industrial revolution and the new technologies that are coming. And we see it as an exciting opportunity to really meld the old with the new. Like Harry was talking about the craftsmanship and the artisans that we have in the UK, but then also the 3D printing technology really gives a business agility to create designs, create moldings for craftsmen and women to work within. And I just think it's a very exciting time. And as I say, from Soho Lighting, and I think I speak on behalf of my colleagues here, we're seeing that as an opportunity for us to compete very fairly against organisations that perhaps historically have just shipped everything over from abroad, because that is harder, it's more expensive, it's no longer as lucrative, and actually we see being part of Made in Britain and bringing more to be made in the UK as a real strong attribute going into the environment that we're going into. So yeah.
And of course, it's part of the key message around sustainability. Sustainability, obviously, of the business economically, because it's got to be profitable. But of course, by buying something that is made in Britain, you are reducing the carbon footprint of that product. I mean, it's less miles travelled, whatever it is that's been made closer to where it's needed, the carbon footprint is less. I want to move on, before we wrap things up, to this topic of sustainability. It's really important to everyone because it's on everybody's lips. How do we go greener? How do we reduce our impact on the environment? How do we improve some of the societal and environmental problems that we seem to have created for ourselves? I'll start with you, Stephen. I'm sure Gresham has a number of different policies and ideas and thoughts about it, but what, in your day-to-day working life, what does sustainability and let's say circularity look like in the Gresham environment?
Well, again, I'll try and come at it from a bigger standpoint than just design, because they've got a default to focus on the design bit. But we try to imagine the full circle of that product's life. So we try to, I'll go to design. From a cradle to cradle standpoint, we try to imagine when that material comes back on site, whether it's being recycled, reused. We try to minimise the number of parts on a new design, the number of parts that we can utilise from a previous, be it a bracket, a cross-section of a piece of steel. If that's an existing component that we use, we try to utilise that in the new design. Sofa's a good example of that. We just try to minimise the superfluous bits that you would, I suppose, as a designer, you can quite easily instinctively add on. We try to pare that back and make things as simple and as straightforward
So net zero waste as opposed to net zero anything else?
Yeah, there's obviously multiple different, again, standpoints that the company comes from, but from a design standpoint, it's just taking a step back. I think we've been, particularly with, again, not to reference the export too much, but with the looking towards the US, how to make that most efficient and sustainable when we're not going to be relying wholly on our manufacturing site in Bolton. We've got to make that as economical as possible to transpose that model across.
Yeah, and it has to be profitable, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, we cannot go green if we're not making money. I mean, that's as clear to everyone, I think, these days. Lee, you've got an interesting story around raw materials, haven't you? Because the raw materials that go into your business are not necessarily virgin raw materials.
Well, I mean, certainly with the Ocean Collection, with the recycled plastics and the fishing nets, yeah, absolutely. It's a really exciting new pathway into creating sustainability. And what we've found is there's such great reception to that. And so that sort of range is going to continue. And I mean, we've had I think if you took anybody at Soho and cut them down the centre like a stick of rock, environmental concerns are core values. We've all got young...
I see Harry nod.
Yeah, it is like
what
that.
is like what we're made of.
Yeah, it really is, and everything that we do, design once, use often, that type of ethos. I mean, we've been looking for, oh my gosh, since we started to try and drive out, and I know it's a common theme now, but when you're looking in lighting, it's really tricky to drive out all plastics from packaging, and we're 80% there. We have got some enormously heavy glass lights, and we've been working with the Cornish country on a Helix cardboard structure to try and take the weight of that. We've had a bit of smashed glass, and we're not there yet, but most of our products now are without any plastics, and we're really proud of that. But that actually works through your supply chain as well, and it's taken a long educational journey with us and our supply chain in ensuring that pervades throughout. But we've got 20% to go, and we've given ourselves a goal by 24. So I'm going to try and not smash anything else and see if we can find something to replace polystyrene.
Well, I think you mentioned the targeting there, and of course it's easy to forget that even smaller growing businesses are also setting science-based targets around improvement in this area. And I know it's something that you care about, Harry. I know we could do another 45 minutes on how you care about this topic, but just tell us some of the things that you're doing at Raw Time to be a really, a genuinely green business that's living that dream of trying to become, completely circular and completely green responsible, which is a harder journey, of course.
Yeah. Set the stop clock. I won't go on too much, I promise.
We're running on 5 minutes left.
Wrought iron has been carbon neutral now for 4 years, and it started off by offsetting our carbon emissions, so investing in renewable energy, replanting, etc. Since then, we've reduced our carbon footprint naturally by 10% each year, and it's our goal that by 2030 we'll have what we call low impact carbon. And there's many things that we do in-house that's kind of to push our carbon credentials. A metal bed should never end in landfill. Metal is fully recyclable. Any of the offcuts from our manufacturing, we actually now melt down to create our castings. So there's no metal waste from our front either. And I think also, it's just, on the radio this morning driving over, I heard some fantastic news that, there is now going to start being push on the foundries in this country to start using blast furnaces rather than coal furnaces, which is a great step. And wrought iron has been active with Royal Warrant Holders Association for many, many months, nearly a year now, trying to lobby the government to bring this to the foresight, because we can only do so much. We can reduce our, we've completely removed single-use plastic. We can reduce our waste. We can put solar panels on the roof. We can make sure that all our energy is green. But then if our supply chain is not green, then, we're kind of like a pea on the back of an elephant. Yeah. So the news today is fantastic.
I've got that picture in my mind.
Has everybody got that picture of a pea on the back of an elephant? Because that's kind of like the scale of this. So the news today is absolutely fantastic, because it just means our lobbying and our pushing for a greener supply chain is actually starting to work.
Yeah. And this has got to be doable, hasn't it? It's got to be achievable. It's got to be accessible and inclusive for smaller businesses, because I feel passionately, actually, that smaller businesses are part of the story of how we're going to turn the whole country green, because it isn't just about expensive certifications that cost many thousands that give you a green wash tick. This is about real actions, and sharing those actions is something we do. A little plug for Made in Britain. What we do offer for all of our members is something called the Green Growth Assessment. So our members can take a green growth assessment, scientifically based pillars around circularity, renewable energy, social responsibility, and all of our members have access to that. And I've been astonished to see some of the scores of some of our smaller businesses scoring extremely well with businesses that turn over many millions and in some case billions. So there is some real positive actions already happening out there. We're trying to put those, as an organisation, we want to put those into the public space to be part of the narrative of how the whole country can turn green. And we do know, of course, and this is something I know all of my members would back me up on, is, of course, resource scarcity is the ultimate environmental challenge that we have. Manufacturers have to take raw materials from somewhere. Thankfully, some of them are able to take them from old fishing nets, but that's not always possible. And so we're trying to give also smaller companies and smaller manufacturers a sense of achievability. this is something that can be done. It's not impossible. We do have the risk of people being paralyzed around the subject of sustainability and social responsibility. And there are many companies, in my view, 2,000 companies that are really putting their hand up and saying, yeah, we want to try and tackle this and use it actually as a message to make British manufacturing more attractive, not just here in this country, but also overseas. We're getting towards the end of our time, but I do want to give some time for people to ask questions. If you've got a question already, you can put your hand up or your hat up, in the case of that gentleman who's got a beautiful... Have you got a question? No. You've got a question. I think I'm going to have to ask... we haven't got a spare microphone, so do you want to pop down and ask the question? And if you just tell us who you are and what the questions, who the question's for.
My name's Derek. I'm from Gresham Office Furniture. I'm one of Steve's
You're a
colleagues
colleague,
in
oh,
design.
right.
He's a plan.
So
That'd be a
I
good
would
question.
like to direct my question towards Lee. You spoke about your educational journey as far as sustainability goes.
Yeah.
Can I ask how you managed to engage the company in that process? You got everyone on board. I mean, was it a case of everybody being on board straight away, or did you have like a situation where you had like an upstart who was almost like a dissenting voice who slowly created a cult around it before everyone got on board?
That's a really great question, Derek. Thank you very much for asking it.
It's a great question. And to answer that, when we started the company, we basically drew in all our mates, all of our kids' friends, and started very organically, almost like cottage industry when we first started. And we all, because we're very like-minded people, we all had a passion around that. And then, of course, as the company became a lot more professional and we grew and we really started taking our products out to market, it was a much more deliberate affair, and it's a part of our, it's on our recruitment, it's in our appraisals, we have think tanks, not specifically focused on sustainability and environmental, but it's a part of that discussion of what can we do, how is the supply chain being managed, and it's on all of our company goals, and it is in our values and in our system. But I think because we started so small, it grew quite naturally, and now it's sort of very firmly embedded. And we have a lot, and I'm not saying this is an ageist thing at all, but we have a lot of young in our company as well, and they are so passionate, and actually they're educating us constantly. So it's a top-down, bottom-up, and it's just a part of our culture now.
That's really, really good to hear. A completely interactive environment where you're onboarding people and normalizing and mainstreaming the ideas of sustainability and how they can be turned into profitability. I imagine you've done something similar at Wrought Iron, Harry.
It's very similar, and the thing is, it does. It comes from the top down and the bottom up.
Yeah.
And it's funny when you said earlier that you cut people in half and they've kind of got green through, and it has to be that way because everybody needs to be kind of working together to be green, and it kind of becomes. When the new people join the company, because the ethos is already there, the new people, it's just natural, it's second nature to focus on how can we be greener. And I mean, there's so many things that we've implemented over the years that have been inspiration from our team. We have quite a few apprenticeships with us, and they have friends we're doing an apprenticeship in other sectors, but they talk outside and they come back in and say, oh, my friend's doing this at their company, they do this. I think this could apply for Wrought Iron. And then we take a look at it and we try and implement it. But that top-down, bottom-up, 100%,
Absolutely.
It has to come
And it's
from
a proven
all areas.
methodology for making sure something sticks as well. I mean, there are a lot of sociologists. I live with a sociologist, and I know that the studies that have been done around top-down, every time it's researched, it just doesn't stick. It only sticks temporarily, and the only way to do it is interactively. I wanted to touch on the topic of the attractiveness of the business to new employees, because, and I don't mind who takes this question. I was sort of looking at you, Stephen, but I know there has been, in lots of sectors in the country, this year and last year, there has been a real sort of fundamental problem of finding people to come and work on your premises. And I think the messages that we've got about, that we've shared today about making the product more attractive are one thing, but is there now a responsibility in business to be thriving by making the company as attractive to incoming employees as possible? Because you want people who share your values, but you do actually need people. And if people aren't coming, what do you change?
Yeah, and Gresham's a funny one, because quite a lot of the people that work at Gresham have worked there for a very long time. Like I said, I've been there 17 years. Derek's been there for 23 years. So
And still loving it, I hope, Derek.
look at his face.
Just about.
We have apprenticeship schemes
Yep.
throughout the different aspects of the business, and they tend to be more focused on the manufacture, which is a great thing, obviously, with what we're discussing. We have a bespoke joinery department which manufactures, well, exactly what it says, one-off pieces that might be for a reception area or boardroom table, something that's the pinnacle piece of a setup. And that's a really good place to learn what, I'm not an expert in that field, but it's quite it's not to coin the phrase, but it's a bespoke craft. It's a difficult thing to do, and it's not something that is frequently taught, I don't think. So that's where the focus of our apprenticeship scheme is. But in regards to the attractiveness of the business, I'd like to think that the evolution of the place over the past 20 years has made it a place that it must have worked because people stick around. So that I suppose that's the best advert that we've got internally, is that when you start as an apprentice, you sat with people and the business is not segregated. We're all, like I said, meetings wise and communal spaces wise, we're all in one place. So the factory is the office, is the showroom. It's one setup, and that, I think, I'd like to think it speaks for itself. I think once you're in, you can't escape.
You don't want to escape.
Yeah.
Once you're in,
that's what
you
I
don't
meant.
want to escape. Now, Lee, you went through a lot of growth last year. Some of it, you had some ups and downs, let's call them. But in growing, did you have the challenge of finding the right people to come in and work in a manufacturing business? Because not all of the work is what people want to do, let's say.
Yeah, we went through enormous growth last year, and we had some growing pains because we needed to expand so quickly, and getting the right people is a real challenge. So we just had really good Friday beers. No, I'm teasing. No, but we do really try to create a sense of community, and if I'm honest, we recruited through word of mouth. I mean, all of our workshops and factories and things are down in Cornwall. People are very connected down there.
Yep.
And so if it became a great place to work, that's often how we would recruit through and get new people in. The other thing that's really important to us is about transition and succession and growing. So, for example, one of the girls that came in the warehouse, she's a really high degree of English, and her writing skills are exceptional. And we're like, we don't have that role for you right now, but if you can come with us for 6 months and get us through this patch. And she's literally just stepped from working in the warehouse and constructing switches and sockets to actually now writing our copy. And
That's wonderful to
and
hear.
so that's really important as well. So people might come into your business with talent or aspirations in different areas, and it's important that you recognise that, grab the talent while you can. It may not be in the right package for them or you at the time, but to know that transition, it can come, and we're living and breathing that, and of course that word of mouth.
And it's a measurable
on.
social impact of what you're doing, of course.
It's really important. We're growing because of it, and their innovation.
Yeah, absolutely valuing the person that comes in to work for you and valuing what they could potentially do in the right environment.
Exactly.
And Harry, do you see that? I know that you've been through all sorts of growth ups and downs, and I know the business is thriving. Have you had challenges getting people in and keeping them, or not?
It's kind of like Gresham. Once they're in, they're in. It's getting them
You're
to
not letting them
apply
out.
for the job that's different, because I
Yeah.
think I mean, making metal beds is not a very glamorous kind of, it is glamorous, but it's not glamorous. It's a very kind of like dirty, grungy, there's a lot of dust, and it's a very labor intensive, as you can imagine. And so to kind of like the younger generation, make myself sound really old there, the young ones, it doesn't appeal anymore. It's not the trendy thing to do, to go out and have a craft, etc., or to learn some form of trade skill. And we kind of realized that about 2 years ago. The skill shortage in our area, kind of in North Norfolk, started about 2 years ago, and now we're working with the local council, local job centre, the college, to try and train the next generation, as it were, so we can make sure that there's longevity in our product. But then to retain them, with everything that's going on economically, we've introduced things like breakfast club. So, if people start before 7 o'clock, we provide them with breakfast. It's great, isn't it? And sausage perhaps. Yeah, of course you can. So we've like a breakfast club. We've increased kind of annual leave, so now everybody will get their birthday off. If they have a spouse or a significant other, they have their birthday off as well. Christmas.
I hope every employer in the room should be taking notes on this.
Or we have jobs going, so please apply. And then at Christmas we do 2-week shutdown for the workshop. So it's taking kind of what we can add as an employer, but also enhance that to benefit the employee as well. But right now, I think it is within the manufacturing industry, there is just such a huge skill shortage in this country, because it's not really the trendy thing to do anymore in regards to employment for the younger generation.
Well, and I mean, that means we probably in the manufacturing sectors, of course, we probably have to get people in to do one thing and perhaps move them on to do something else and keep the rotation going. I know some of the big manufacturers do have policies that very specifically move people around so that they're not doing the same thing all the time, and that they're given a chance to grow within the business. We're getting towards the end of our time, and our time here. I do want to check around quickly on if there is any other questions that people have. Burning questions about British manufacturing success and growth this year. It appears not. So I think before we wrap then, I'll ask if they can. I'll give my members of Made in Britain the challenge of if they can come up with 2 or 3 good words for British manufacturing growth this year at Gresham or at Soho or at Wrought Iron Beds. I think I'll take that as our cue to leave the stage. But Stephen, have you got any 3 good words to say about British manufacturing growth at Gresham this year?
I would say diverse in regards to where we get that from. Inspiring in regards to what we're hoping to export to the US. And a 3rd word, multidisciplinary. Is that one word?
That's a very long word for a Monday morning or Monday lunchtime. Harry.
So I would say, and I think this applies to anybody in British manufacturing or British retail, where is the opportunity for you to export? And that would just be invest in possibilities.
Yeah, that's a lovely, lovely message. Lee, that's a difficult one. He set the bar high.
Everything that Harry and Stephen just said, plus. I think for us, it's about exciting new products, evolving sources of materials, and then just being creative and listening to your customer. That's 4, I'm sorry. But so just really listening to what's needed and evolving your designs.
Well, I think between the 3 of you came up with some excellent answer. There was one sort of collective answer of the thought for British manufacturers. So all that remains for me to do is to point everyone to the Made in Britain website. If you'd like to find out more about Made in Britain, and the Made in Britain mark and our organisation, which is non-profit, and we work very closely with government and lots of other trade bodies to promote the growth of British manufacturing. We think that's really important. I know all my members think that that's important, and the most important thing we can do as consumers, if you like, is to buy something that's made in Britain, because we know that that thing has been made closer to where it's needed, and you can identify things that are made in Britain by looking out for the Made in Britain mark. And you can see that, it's on my lapel here, or you can see it on the website. So thank you very much to our panelists. We've not done this before, so we're getting to know each other in front of you, and if you've got any questions for them that you'd like to approach us with, or you'd like to know more about the 3 businesses that they've been representing, then do come up to the stage and we'll have a chat. Thank you very much, and thank you for listening to us for 45 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.